Hey guys, Sandy here, and welcome back to the channel. Today I have a pretty exciting project for you. I'm using some of my Brutus Monroe products. This is the Extra Sentimental stamp set. This is the Flower Burst. This is the June stamp of the month. I have some Aqua Pigment paper and also the sequins that came in my June inspiration box, which was Magical Mermaid. So let's see what I can do. The first thing I do is grab my Aqua Pigments so I can play with the Aqua Pigment paper. So I've pulled out two different colors. One is turquoise, one is blue, and then I also pulled out the gilded. Now I am not doing any kind of fancy technique. I'm not doing any kind of like really artistic thing other than I was dropping some paint, or rather some aqua pigment, down on the paper, and now I am just taking a brush and brushing it all around. So I do have the two colors. It is a little bit difficult to be able to see the two different colors. They do blend together super well and make another third beautiful color. If I would have waited for one of them to dry, I could have built a little bit of layering up. But you know what? I am not one for patience, so that didn't happen. Now, I am going to go ahead and add a little bit more water, and I do blot it down just a little bit because there was a lot of aqua pigment on this card. As you can see, it was kind of bleeding through the backside. So now I am going to go ahead and add a little bit more water, a little bit more color. This is where the layering is starting to get into effect. And then I decide, you know what, I'm just gonna squirt the heck out of this. I am going to put so much water on this that it's going to look glossy while I'm putting it together. And I love the effect that happened with this. I drop on the gilded and I'm just kind of bringing it around. I felt like I needed to pop that bubble and then kind of get some of that leftover aqua pigment that was kind of puddling on the sides of the paper off. Now I do create a couple of these backgrounds. This is the only one that will be on camera though. So I'm going to let that dry. I'm going to put it off to the side, and then I am going to figure out what I am going to do here. So I figured that I was going to put my sentiments on black cardstock, and to do that I was going to emboss with some white embossing powder. Now I do use an anti-static powder bag on top of my cardstock, and then I'm just going to arrange my sentiment where I want it. I grab my alabaster embossing powder, my alabaster white embossing powder, and my clear embossing ink pad. And look at that. Okay, it already looks amazing with the white on the black, and it's gonna look even more amazing once I heat emboss it. And heat embossing, you guys, is magic. I am completely convinced it's magic. I know that there's science and things melt and all that kind of stuff, but it's magic, okay? It is just magic. So that is done, and I really like the way that looks. I also stamped up the thinking of you, and then embossed that in the alabaster white as well. I grabbed my foundation dies in rectangle and circle shapes to go ahead and cut out those sentiments. I just ran through my die cut machine, and now it is time to put the cards together. Now I did run one of my watercolor backgrounds through with the die, and then I also ran the die through with some white cardstock. Now I made sure that my circle was going to be large enough to cover up that center kind of like sunbursty flower, and then on my rectangle one, which I lost it and didn't see it. I'm like, did I adhere it to the back? And like, obviously we can see that it's over there on top of that card. But when I was creating, I just didn't see it. I was completely blind to it. Now I thought about putting it in the center, but ultimately I decided I liked it down here at the bottom. So I'm just going to add some adhesive on there and pop that down. So my white one is going over top of that blue and turquoisey and gold watercolor background that I made. And then my green one is going to go over top of some plain cardstock. Now I'm going to make a shaker card out of this one. And what I'm doing is I just took some packaging because I honestly don't know where my acetate is right now. So I just took some packaging. I'm going to use liquid glue to go ahead and place the packaging directly onto this card front. And I'm just dotting it around. I want to make sure that I have good adhesion. I don't want my shaker card to fall apart. So I go ahead and place that packaging down onto the card, and I just make sure that it is smoothed out. I do use a scrap sheet of cardstock to go ahead and push it through, and then that way any glue that seeped out is going to get on that cardstock instead of all over my hands. I do trim off the packaging around the edge because there was a little bit of hangover, and nobody needs that in their lives. So now I am taking a card base, and I'm just going to go ahead and make that into the card base. And you know, I have a bone folder, but I just used my fingernail to go ahead and make the crease really, really good. So this watercolor panel is going to go directly onto the card base. I am adhering it with a non-liquid glue. We're just going to get that down on there, press it down so that it adheres greatly, and then I'm just trimming off the little bit of excess off of the watercolor panel. So now it is time to actually make the shaker, and I am going to do that with some foam tape. So I have these long, what am I doing? Oh, I'm trimming it down a little bit. Need to make sure that everything is trimmed, and it would be much easier to trim it down before the shaker is put together rather than after. So I do add just a tiny bit of anti-static to the center of this shaker piece, and that's just because I want my sequins to be able to move ever so slightly. I don't want them to be all stuck to the plastic and then they not move at all. So I am using some long, thin foam tape, and I'm just being careful to go around the complete outside of the card, and there will be no gaps where the foam tape meets up. And that's important because you don't want things escaping. If I was using smaller shaker fills like seed beads or something like that, it is super, super important not to have any kind of gap in your foam tape. Not so much with the size of the sequins that I'm using today, but it's a good practice to make sure that you don't have any gaps. And if you were even thinking of using seed beads or something like that in your shaker, I would even suggest using some liquid glue and kind of sealing your joins, like kind of like caulking them, letting that liquid glue dry, and then filling your shaker, because what that's going to do is it's going to give you a barrier so the seed beads won't be able to work their way through. Now, like I said, these sequins came in an inspiration box, so I'm just going to go ahead and get those down there. And I really think that the sequin colors go great with my background. They kind of almost even blend in together. And I think you probably could have made this card with just a white background, but I think that aqua pigment background really just kind of steps it up a little bit. So you have the shining, shimmering, splendid peeking through and you also have that great background that's back there. So I decided to put this one on a black card base. And as you can see, my purple tape is still on my die cut, and I'm leaving it there. Nobody sees it, and it's in the back of it. And honestly, if somebody wants to pull apart a card that I made and they see the purple tape on the back and it offends them, like, oh well. It's the back of the card. You're not supposed to do that anyway. So I go ahead and put that down, and then I clean up the glue a little bit, and then here are the cards. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Make sure you hit subscribe, make sure you ring the bell so you get notifications when videos go up, and I will see you guys again real soon for another video.